make sure your decisions and your designs are always with the human experience as the true end goal. That should be the reality. You should not be designing technology just for designing technology.
Gustavo, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Chris.
We finally meet.
Yeah, finally meet in person. After
How long has it been? Like, what, 7 years maybe?
Since 2017. So yeah, 7 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I remember when you called me first, out of the blue, say, hey, I was in Schneider Electric at the time, just moved from US to Paris.
Vice President of People Analytics.
Yeah, I was VP of People Analytics for Schneider, building the team, and you told me about what you were trying to do, and I just heard your pitch, and I felt like, okay, this guy has a similar mindset to what I have, and I just wanted to express my ideas, so it was a perfect timing for us to meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that was like just me and the company was me and Shane in my bedroom.
Yes.
At that point. And I think what happened was we kind of saw this emerging topic of people analytics. It wasn't. I think everyone was calling it HR analytics back then, and it kept coming up more and more in our conversations. And we realized there really wasn't a network or events or a community that was built around that. And we were like, okay, this is super interesting. I think at the time there was maybe only a couple of hundred people
probably
that had a director VP role in people analytics.
Yes.
HR analytics, a lot of them. You were one of the first.
Yes.
That was called people analytics. Back then it was like 80% HR analytics and then people analytics. Now it's the opposite, obviously. Before we go into more detail, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, your background, and sort of the journey to where you are now and the work that you're doing now.
For those who know me, my name is Gustavo Canton. I was born in Panama. Lived in the US for many years, worked for big corporations in the space of analytics. Analytics and data has been basically my passion. I work for all these big companies, in Europe, Latin America, consulted internationally. Love what I do, love data and technology, but I realized there was a gap. And so that's why I founded this startup called imhmn, because I'm trying to help organizations actually transform faster, because the rate of transformation that I'm seeing, not only in the HR space, across the board, I don't think it's going fast enough relative to what is happening in the industry. So I saw a need. I felt I have a purpose. Basically use technology and AI for the benefit of the human experience. If I were to summarize it, that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's called I Am Human, because I want to design for the human experience. I don't want to design for the technology.
Which is a mistake.
Yes, it's a huge mistake.
You've learned that many times in many companies.
Huge mistake. And honestly, I feel I have responsibility because I was, when social media came about, I don't know if you remember, there was a time that companies were not using Facebook and Google to advertise, and they were trying to prove if actually was profitable to use social media.
Yeah.
And I was in that space, and at the time, what was the mindset? Let's just go fast. This is exciting. We were not thinking about the implications for mental health or implications for productivity in the workplace or all this other stuff that happened through social media. So now that I am more mature in my journey, and I have learned and see more things in this space, I wanna, on the one hand, I want people to be excited for technology and transformation, but on the other hand, I want people to be conscious and cautious about how they use technology. That's why I never say AI is a great thing. I say I support ethical AI. That's the space that I am.
What do you mean by that?
Most companies are very focused on, for example, data quality, data integrity, data trust. Now you hear more people talking about data bias, the bias in data, right? If you look at Gartner, for example, they made a list of let's say, the top 30 roles that we need for the future. And from the 30 roles, there is one that is dedicated to the ethics of the data. That doesn't make sense. We all should be dedicated to the ethics of the data. And so a very pragmatic thing that you can do, if you have a company right now, go to your IT team and ask them, what are your ethical guidelines for data? I create ethical guidelines and I share it, across the board for people to see it, because I want them to actually start writing, okay, how do I make sure the data is secure? How do I make sure the data is not biased against specific gender or religion or something like that, for recruiting, for example, right? Like, do you actually have guidelines in place that you have written in terms of how do you manage the data beyond the fact of looking at quality of data, timeliness of data, completeness of data? Like, all those things are important, but you need to have somebody with a background, hopefully in psychology or neuroscience or something.
I was about to say, what qualifies someone to make those decisions?
Usually, you have to have somebody with psychology background or some kind of background, sociology, that actually understands human behavior, that can basically help you kind of manage or remove bias from the data.
It's quite a unique person, right? Someone who understands that, but also understands the technology. That's quite a unique set of skills.
Correct. And I think that's the part. I think most companies that I go to, they don't have that mix of people, or they don't have a person that dedicates to this role. And that's a huge gap in the market.
Why is it so important though? What are the implications of not doing that?
I'll give you the example. And nobody can predict the future, but you can simulate the future. So you have seen the examples of when they take data and they start doing recruitment, and some of the data based on the name of the person, people get dismissed from the pool of talent. Sometimes it's years of experience or certain level of education.
Age.
I mean, I don't know how much is the impact of age in Europe today, but I can tell you in the US, there is still a lot of ageism and again, those things are biased in our data. There are people who have 50 years, 70 years, how many years, and their mindset works great. There are people who have 30 years old, they might be younger, but they don't have the right mindset. It's not about age, it's about mindset. So there is a lot of implications for recruitment, talent mobility, how promotions are given. There is a lot of bias that we have as managers.
Yeah.
Just to give you an example, we proved through the pandemic that remote working was effective for many different roles. And now we're going back to that era of we're forgetting about what we learned throughout the pandemic, and we are having this bias of promoting people that we see.
Slowly reverting back.
Yeah, it's the people that we see often in the office. We have a bias to promote based on that. And managers, we know this through studies, that managers are making these decisions because they are looking at from the human emotional lens as opposed to
I see that, but I see
bias.
Chris in the office every day. I interact with that person, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
What are some of the other examples of that?
There is an example with Twitter, right?
Okay.
So Elon Musk goes into Twitter, they disrupt the company for good or for bad. However you want to look at it, to me it's a great case study because 80% of people were let go of Twitter, now called X. And again, to me, that's an example where you are trying to use technology to replace a lot of people's job, and you're trying to use AI to try to their job, but it has been proven based on the revenue and the profit of their stock that's not always the solution. You need to know how to do this in a humane way. You cannot just try to replace everybody. Just because you can do it, that doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
Right? Another example is what is happening with the trucking industry across the world. They're having a lot of work developing self-driven cars and technology. And in theory, you can replace a lot of people today in their jobs. But a lot of the, obviously, unions and companies and labor are getting together and say, hey, guys, we need to be careful because if you do this, thousands and thousands of people will be unemployed in months. And so now some states or countries are putting guidelines on how to do the transition from that. Just because you're working in an office with a nice job, and this has been the case, many cases we look at this and we think, oh, this is not going to happen to me. But there are scenarios where 20% of what we call white-collar jobs can go away because of technology in the next 5 years. I'm not talking about 20 years, I'm talking about 5 years.
That's pretty scary when you put it
So yeah, we have to be in tune with what is happening. That's part of the reason I wanted to talk to people about this. It's not just because I want to sell something. I just want people to be conscious and kind of like wake up from the day-to-day reality of, oh, I'm just working on my job, but look what is happening in the industry. All the world is changing dramatically, and it's going to impact you and your lifestyle, and it's going to happen very soon.
What do you think about the argument? I hear a lot of people say, those jobs aren't going to be replaced, but you will be replaced by someone who uses generative AI.
A good example for that is, let's take radiologists, right? Radiologists, right now the AI can do the job as equal or better than a radiology. So in theory, there are leaders who sometimes don't understand the ultimate consequence, right? And they will say, oh yeah, let's replace all the radiologists. Most people who are conscious will not do that. But let's say that happens. You can do it. Technically, you can do it. But no, what is happening is that radiologists that are working with AI are actually getting more opportunities, right? And the ones who are not working with AI are going to get replaced. But yeah, to your point, if you attach yourself, it's like augment yourself with the technology as an individual, you're going to continue to do well. If you don't do that and you try to steer away from it, it's not going to go well. You can tell me the industry, I will tell you how many people are getting replaced. Let's just see what happened with Hollywood writers. You see what happened, right?
Yeah, they're all striking right now.
Yeah, there was a strike. A bunch of shows that were not happening, they were not written because there was some pushback. Part of it was technology and the AI. Part of it was other reasons. It's not everything about AI. But with that being said, it's showing you how some leaders have this mindset that, hey, I can just use technology to replace everything, And it's a leadership decision, ultimately. If a company wants to do it, they can do it.
A lot of people making decisions don't really understand the nuances of the role. Like
Correct.
A good example, like before we hit record, I was telling you about my old sales organization that they tried to replace the entire sales team with marketing.
Yep.
Through bots, through traditional digital marketing. And I told you how after 8 months, the company went from a 30 million pound business to selling off in pieces. As well, because they took away the people element.
Yep.
And thought we can replace that with technology. Didn't understand the relationships that were built with those specific clients through those individual people over time, and that's earned over time. You can't buy trust and buy relationships through technology.
Yeah, and also I think people underestimate the culture aspects of it and the relationship. Like once you get into a role. And to me, I was guilty of that. Like I used to be in analytics because I used to love the data, the coding, the modeling, statistics. That's honestly what I got into the space. But over time, I realized it's very hard to replace someone who understands all the nuances and the data and the tables and how you navigate information.
Power dynamics.
Yeah, the power dynamics.
Relationships.
Yeah, and I started my career in Sam's Club, which is part of Walmart. So it was a gigantic organization, and you have to know how to navigate that organization. And I'm telling you, for me, it was a great learning and a great place for me to kind of get my leadership culture and working culture, because after going to such a huge organization, it's much easier for me to go to small organizations.
Yeah.
And
learn the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it works out. And again, same as you happen for you, I see in my case how leaders come in, they try to replace people because they see something very logical, but they don't understand, to your point, the unintended consequences of replacing those people.
Well, it's like when I spoke to most CHROs that I interview on the show, I say, when you first join a company, what does your first 6 to 12 months look like? Most of the time, they spend the first 6 months just building relationships.
Yep.
Right? Traveling all over the organization, getting to know the leaders, understanding the pain points, building that trust before they make any type of change. Or investing in any type of technology. It's building the human relationships in the organizations before that. And the ones that don't do that come in and all of a sudden start making all these changes without really involving the employees and the leaders, it's a disaster.
It is.
As well.
And I will tell you something that I think is a huge mistake in many companies, that they don't have an onboarding bodies, like sometimes that will come and help you get into organization and kind of walk you through some of those nuances. I was lucky enough when I came to Europe, I actually went through a full training of culture, because I was working with the French culture, which is different than the Panamanian culture, Latin American culture, and then American culture. And to your point, I used to work during my lunch break because that was my usual US mindset, until one day one executive told me, Gustavo, you need to have discussions in the coffee break with the leaders. And I never thought about that until they told me that. It didn't sound reasonable.
Yeah, of course.
But when I started doing that, I actually understood really what was happening. And they will tell me things that they will not do openly in meetings, because it's a different culture. Like a team meeting in a culture in France is very different to a team culture meeting in the US. So I had to learn a lot of nuances in navigating that. And just so you know, every chief analytics officer or chief data officer, right now, I think their tenure is less than 3 years. Like 70% of them only last 3 years. And now it's actually decreasing. Yeah. And part of the reason is that aspect. It's the nuance, the culture, enabling the business, the relationships. That's honestly what is driving that. It's not technological acumen or skill set. It's just that how we integrate with the culture.
Yeah. I think we're seeing that at all levels. The same thing with HR. So of the average, you look on LinkedIn, it's like 2-3 years.
Yep.
Then they're off to the next business. And then kind of part of me also thinks about how much real meaningful lasting change can you even make in that period of time.
That will depend on the company. This is interesting. Every company has their culture, but every team within the company has their culture. I came from a place, when I was in Walmart, you get promoted in my time every 18 months or every year. So 12 months. Sometimes I'll get promotions. But it was meaningful because in Walmart, even though it's a huge organization, you can make changes very fast sometimes. Like projects, 3 months. When I was working in Sam's Club, I was the analyst, I was the manager, I was doing everything in analytics at the time, and I was supporting the Field division, operations, marketing, HR, everybody. And it was 3-month project. And in 3 months, it was into production.
Wow.
Huge decisions. That's the difference of some of these companies, why they...
I wouldn't have expected that for a large normally you associate the larger the company, the slower.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the team and it depends on your buying. When I got into Walmart, for those who don't know my story, I was an intern and I did a project. My first project was to sell the idea of having fuel stations outside of the box, because at the time they were not sure if that was...
What, sorry?
Outside of the actual store. Like, you know, you have the
petrol
store,
stations.
like the petrol stations.
Oh, okay, yeah. Which is normal for us in the UK.
Yes.
Every Asda or Tesco has a petrol station.
Exactly.
Outside, yeah.
But at the time, they were thinking it's not a good business for some reason. I don't know why, but they were thinking it was not a business. And the fuel division they wanted me to show the case, to support, to invest in it.
Okay.
And so that was my first project ever as an intern. That thing is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars because it started for Sam's Club, but then Walmart, it took me 3 years to sell it to Walmart. But for Sam's Club, it was 3 months to sell it to Sam's Club.
Oh, wow, okay.
You see the difference?
Big difference.
Even though it's the same company and they see the same data, to your point, it depends on what function you are in the same company, doing what.
I want to go back to the AI bit for a second. What do you see sort of the potential risks and implications for humanity as a whole?
So that's a big question, right? I will tell you this. Think about this for a moment. We have gone through a 50-year journey since AI. Like I was listening the other day to Jeffrey Hinton, which by the way, I think is from the UK.
Yes.
He's considered the godfather of AI. I was listening to him recently and put into perspective, we have gone through this journey for 50 years, but at his time, he couldn't prove that AI could reach these levels of intelligence. Now, recently, after all this time, finally people can see that what he was saying back in the 70s actually can materialize, because now we have the technology, we have the scalability, the systems to actually pull it off, right? Mm-hmm. So we have this intelligence. But now, in the next 5 years, if you're following the trends, that's what people call the singularity, which is when the level of intelligence of the AI surpasses the level of the human, and they have consciousness, which today they don't have, right?
Which is scary. That's like Terminator.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. To be honest, my favorite movie is The Matrix, and I'm telling you.
Okay, or The Matrix, yeah. The Matrix is a better version, yeah.
A lot of what we're seeing today is funny enough how it's mirroring that story.
It's pretty scary, to be honest.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. But again, it's all about choices. If we make the right choices today, then there is nothing to fear. We would use technology to benefit ourselves and to augment our reality or to augment our capacity. Like, for example, with artificial intelligence for the neural link, what Elon is trying to do. Mm-hmm. Great, for people who have disease, mental health problems or disease like genetically issues with like Alzheimer's, stuff like that. Great, that can help. In the health industry, there is a ton of potential. And today, there is a lot of companies who are using it for the good of things. But on the other side, you know what happens when you develop AI. AI is like it's like a weapon too.
Weaponize it.
It's like weaponize it. If you have watched
we haven't got a good track record as humans when it comes to that.
Funny enough, have you watched the movie Oppenheimer?
No, but I literally was just thinking about that. As I said, we haven't got a good track record. Yeah.
Watch the movie Oppenheimer, and in a way, it reminds me, like if you see what they went through during that time period, it's exactly what we're going through now. The people who were developing the atomic bomb at the time, after they develop it, they realize the implication. They were like, oh, hold on, we need to be careful with this. We need to understand better the consequences. They actually got conscious and realized what could happen. When we did social media, in that time of social media, with technology, we didn't understood some of the implications because we went through fast, and a lot of it has implications today in mental health. You see,
the kids.
I was saying millennials. I was just telling you.
Yeah.
More than 60% of millennials are having challenges with mental health
from social media.
Social media is a big component of that. It's not everything, but it's a big component of that, right? So my fear with AI is that imagine that you have something that is even better than you understanding human behavior. We have 100 million connections in our brain, 100 trillion. A chatbot today with AI have 1 trillion, and it can make faster connections in that 1 trillion network than what we can do with our brains. And that's what we're trying to hit. So now we have been the most sophisticated being in this planet for all these thousands of years. We're about to become second place. And trust me, You have seen through humanity what happens when you have two different group of countries and one has more weapons than the other, what happens. My fear is that we can weaponize, AI, and then, it can change your life for the worse. Mm-hmm. It can change the way you think, it can change the way you make decisions, it can change the way your work. Some countries are already starting to test the idea of, giving people like a minimum wage and see how they react, how the economy reacts, because there might be a point that if we keep replacing jobs with technology, we might have a lot of people that will need a complementary income or something, for the day-to-day life.
There's quite a few countries that have already done that, right?
Yeah, some countries are testing it, and also the concept of the 4-day week, which I highly advocate for that. And when I say this, sometimes people like, oh my gosh, it's about working less, about being lazy. No, there is no way that you can keep up with the rate of learning that you are supposed to keep up if you keep working hard, right? You are supposed to work smart and learn hard. That should be.
Well, that's kind of one of the issues with technology, right? Is people are using that free time and just replacing it with more work. It's like, okay, you've freed up that time now. Now you can do even more of that work. No, that shouldn't be. That's leading to burnout. And we're seeing that already with people, right?
I remember interviewing with companies and asking them like, what's your policy for remote work? And if an executive will tell me like, we don't believe in remote work, this is 2017, I'll be like, okay, this might not be the right company for me. Just because of that tells me how you think. And in that time when the pandemic happened, luckily for me, I was in Schneider Electric at the time. I was the head of the VP of analytics on the people division. Like any company has opportunities, but in that regard, they were very flexible, and my team was all over the world. I had people in Australia, people in Ireland, some people in Spain, US. Everybody was remote. We will see each other twice a year, or maybe once a year in a team building exercise, and we will spend time together in person. But for the most part, we learned how to work remotely. When the pandemic happened, our team didn't skip a beat. Nothing happened because we knew how to operate in that environment. Like you, we were able to adapt very quickly. And I saw a lot of businesses and a lot of teams crumble when that happened just because they didn't know how to operate in a flexible environment.
Specifically going back to HR for a second, what are some of the applications that you see around HR as a function can use large language models?
I mean, there is a ton of implications. I'll give you an example. We were talking about learning earlier today. Think about it this way. Amazon, for example, was the one who made famous these recommendations for products, right? Building your products, right? If you today have benefits, like a benefits team or your talent team, think about how can you use these models in AI to actually recommend curriculum for learning or path that is personalized to a specific employee or associate in your company. That's an amazing application. Like when I was back in Walmart, I used to do genetic algorithms to optimize the benefit or the perks that an associate will get. And that was a very complex exercise at the time. And you can do it, like we did it once. It was a one-time shot. You get the data and it's, okay, this is the package that you should give, right? But now you can get so much more granular with it. You can personalize it, and it can change every month. In real time, yeah. And it can change every day. Everything is a different level of speed and personalization, right? So if you're an executive in HR and today you're not using those algorithms that are being used regularly in marketing or other fields to recommend your products or your benefits, you are missing out. Another application that I think is the fastest growing application in terms of large language models that I'm seeing in terms of APIs. These models that are similar to the ChatGPT with the natural language process, like the search with the AI in the background, right? If you're using one of those, it has grown more than 1,000% just in 7 months. I think like from November to I think it was November of last year to May of this year, 1,000% growth just on companies who are using APIs for these kind of engines.
Yeah.
And think about like you're actually doing some of that too. And
exactly. We're a team of 10 and we're already using it.
Yeah.
In our which we're excited to share. Like, yeah, it's incredible. And it's not easy, but I mean relatively easy and cost effective. Even if a small company like mine can make it happen pretty quickly, and it's going to be a game changer.
Correct. Yeah. And you figure out, kudos to you guys, but if you haven't figured out, if you don't have a huge amount of resources to work on this, there are companies that you can partner with to do it. Or if you are large companies, I still talk to some of my friends in like big companies, Starbucks, Walmart, so on. and they have their own resources within the company. They are building their own.
Yeah.
Some of them are startups now that are coming out in the HR space that you can actually, they will do it for you and they will install it for you in your company. So there is no excuse not to get into this.
No.
If you don't get into this, I promise you, you're going to get behind. You're going to stay behind very quickly, right?
Is that a lot of what you help companies with when
Yes.
you go in? So explain that a little bit more about obviously what you're doing at imhmn.
Yeah. So for example, I will tell you, when I go to a company, usually I have 3 metrics of success that I look at. And they are all based on individuals because in the end, I care for the experience. I don't care so much for the technology. So usually what I do is I do an assessment. I see where you are in your journey, like most companies do. I see your technology stack. I see your talent on the team, and I see where you want to get to. And basically, I do a journey. Imagine like climbing a mountain, right? And I do a journey. And I say, okay, here's where your vision is. Here's where you want to get to. I want the experience for your stakeholders to be X%. I want your adoption of your products X%. Like I look at this as a business of you're selling a product. I don't look at it as a team that is within a company. No, you're a team within the company, but your job is to be an entrepreneur, and we want to have X% of adoption. We want to save X amount of time. And then if you follow this logic, I guarantee you, and you connect it to the business, you will get X amount in revenue. You see, I'm going backwards towards the logical.
Like when we first spoke about people analytics, so the first piece of advice you said to me, Chris, when I was like, where do you start? You were like, so start with the business problem and work backwards.
Correct.
From there, same philosophy.
And I'm telling you, I've been saying this for, you know me for 10 years, and I still go to companies, and when they design the tool, I'm telling you, they start with the technology, or they start with like all these criteria, hundreds of checklists that they go through.
Yeah.
And when I ask them, okay, how are you going to measure the success of this? Well, the CPU capacity and the velocity of the tool, and say, no. What is going to be the end user experience? What is going to be their adoption, the time savings? And then from there, depending on your company, if you want to get into well-being, fairness of environment, there are other stuff that are not as technical that you can measure with the product.
Sure.
But you should be selling your data as a product in your company, first of all. And you should be selling your services as a product, not as we're going to do one project. I'll give you an example why this is important. I don't know the exact number for HR, but I mean, in general, most companies who develop algorithms, like machine learning algorithms, they were developing 5 in the past, and there was 1 in production. Imagine that. So for every 5 big projects that you work on machine learning, only 1 was actually implemented into production. Now we're getting better. We're getting 1 out of 3. But the idea will be to get 100% of production of your models. You see? And part of the issue that we had in the past, some of it was technology, some of it was the system security, scalability, all that stuff, the technical aspects.
Yeah.
But in reality, it was a disconnect between the business and what we were building here. Like we were building something that looks very cool for us, but they are like, oh, we don't need that.
It's not solving a problem.
We're not going to implement it, so we're not going to use it. At least now we're getting closer and closer to a space where people are actually implementing what is being put by technologies, the data team, analytics team, etc.
It comes back to the people bit, right?
Yeah.
Again, because if you don't understand the pain points and don't have the necessary relationships internally, you could be a genius and have the best technology in the world, but you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. And you need to have critical mass. Sometimes you go to a company and you are the only sane person in the room, right? And there are like 20 people that are still thinking and operating like, oh, this is what we used to do. And why change? I mean, we've been doing it for 15 years. Why change now? I'm telling you, that's one of when I hear that expression, I know this is going to be a hard transformation. If you tell me you're doing something for 15 years and why change now, if you have that mindset, it's very hard for you to change your mindset. But
it's crazy.
Right?
Yeah. Wasn't you also working on a project of where companies should and shouldn't invest their resources in terms of offices?
Correct. Yes.
Explain that better than me. I did a terrible job of just explaining that.
No. So what happens at the time, and you can see this for global companies, right? Having real estate in UK,
yes,
Singapore, Barcelona, Boston, New York. These are very high costs of retail,
London.
of land. Yeah, it's immense. And so one thing that people were able to pivot during the pandemic is, how do I invest in my real estate, my footprint? Do I need to have all these people in the offices? Like, cost-effective wise, let's move some offices through India, because it might be cheaper to have the operations there. If we have 3 floors in the Hong Kong buildings, let's reduce to 1 and have everybody else work remotely. So we used to help advise the company on doing that. Again, because I had the background on business continuity, it was easy for me to see how can you pivot quickly and actually, look at the world.
What data sets do you utilize to kind of get an understanding of how much you would need? How did you measure that?
It's basically, you have the cost of the actual footprint, like how much you pay on lease.
Yeah.
You have contracts, and then you work backwards and see, okay, what percentage of people in this floor can do their jobs and operate in that way? And then you do basically a return on investment, right? You have X amount of people working on this floor for this amount of time. Does it make sense for me to have the lease here, or should I just change positions?
Okay.
People who do analytics, if you do geospatial analytics, when you try to put a new store, or if you put a store here and there's cannibalization, it's a similar
but working backwards
approach of working backwards.
Interesting.
To get to that, right? But
that was quite a new thing at the time. No one was really doing that. Like all of a sudden, all of the leaders I was speaking to were reassessing their real estate portfolio and having to work in the way you just did. But that was the first time they ever had to do that, especially
at that scale, right? Because it was happening globally. Like you have seen maybe people maybe they were doing in a country,
exactly,
or something
not
specific.
Not the whole thing.
Exactly, but not at that scale for sure. That was a whole different ballgame. But again, it shows us how much we can do, and it kind of break that paradigm that you have to have these huge offices or these huge campus to operate. You don't need that. I want to challenge every leader that is listening to this in HR. And I want to challenge this. And I want to say, to your point, what is the balance, right? Depending on the function, we all support the business. So let's say we're supporting a business, and to your point, there is a timing for the business. If there is something that needs to happen in 6 months for the business, there is no way that you can plan a project or a product for 2 years. You miss the mark, right?
It's already gone.
Yeah. So what we should ask ourselves is, okay, if we are supposed to hit a 6-month mark, what are the steps that we need to do and reverse engineer to get to that stage? And again, you also have to have a change of culture. And I'm telling you this with all my love. Depending for the country that you are, some countries are very risk adverse. It's a generalization, right? In every country, there are different pockets of people, different companies, different cultures within the country. But I see, in general speaking, I come from Latin America, Panama, very close-knit society, amazing for family relationships. But at work, you are very worried if you made a mistake, right? Because the group is important in how you're perceived, and you are always sometimes walking half step.
Yeah.
Right. And so my point is, if you're in a culture that is like that, that is the true challenge.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, time is relative. I have seen the same project happen in a company in 2 years that I was able to do in 3 months.
Yeah.
The same exact project, the same technology. It's just a way.
Nothing changed.
It's just the culture.
Purely the culture and the people.
How people and their mindset of taking risk, and how they will feel if something fails. To me, there is no failure. There is learning.
Exactly.
There is learning.
For me, I just see it as an opportunity for growth, and you learn something out of it. It's not a failure. It's only a failure if you give up, really, or if you don't learn from it. Listen, before I let you go, parting piece of advice. All things LLMs and AI. And then also, where can people connect with you if they want to reach out and learn more about you?
For sure. So again, my main advice to you is, number one, think in terms of ethical AI, think in terms of the human experience for everything you design. Make sure you challenge your IT functions or your leadership in having guidelines for the ethics and how you handle the data. If you have that document, that will help you a lot to at least have a framework in which you operate for the future.
If you don't have one, ask ChatGPT. It can help you write one.
Yeah. Or go to my website, www.imhmn.com. I have actually guidelines. You can actually download them from there.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. Amazing.
It's there. Yeah, you can just download from there and you can see. And I wanted to do that as a service because I'm telling you, I am not afraid of the future, but I am concerned of how these people are disconnected from the future. So wake up to what is happening. Please make sure your decisions and your designs are always with the human experience as the true end goal. That should be the reality. You should not be designing technology just for designing technology. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like you're talking to the right audience who understand that, but it's good to reiterate it. I'll also definitely connect with Gustavo on LinkedIn. You're pretty active there. But wherever you're listening or watching right now, those links are going to be below. So whether it's, so make sure you go and connect there, check out the website. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure to see like you grow and develop over the years to where you are now. And I'm so excited for the new journey that you're on. You're not only getting to impact it in one organization, but work with many and have a broader impact on society in general.
Likewise. And I wanted to say thank you, because I also have seen you grow from your your bedroom doing all these things. Yeah. And I see how you have grown in 7 years. Now you have this amazing setup. You have this audience, all this network across the globe. Like you have built your brand and your reputation, and people trust you, and you are doing a lot of good for humanity, which I love to advocate for people like you. So again, thank you for what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, and don't be afraid to take risks like you have done in the past, right? Just keep doing what you're doing. Be courageous.
I will. Thanks a lot, man.
All right.
Pleasure.
Thank you.